So, We Live in Time was directed by John Crowley and it stars Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. And it's about them. They're a couple, they get together, they face several hardships, they go through a decade of this relationship and such. And yeah, that's pretty much the movie. So, this is a movie that I was kind of looking forward to for a couple reasons. First up, A24 was distributing it. I usually go crazy for A24 movies. And second, Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. I do like them as actors, and I was definitely curious to see what they would do in this movie. I'm definitely surprised that they would do a movie together so soon after they presented an award at the Oscars a couple years ago. So pretty fun to cash in on that pretty quickly. And this was a movie that the trailers themselves looked all right. They looked okay enough. Like it looked like kind of a generic movie and such, like a generic romance movie and such. But having seen it now, yeah, it pretty much is just kind of told out of order and such. And this is a movie that, I do respect, I do like, but at the same time, I feel like it's a little too obvious at times. But I'll dive into it. First off, I do think the two leads are fantastic. I did like Andrew Garfield, I did like Florence Pugh, I did like their chemistry. You definitely believe them as a couple, and you definitely believe their characters, their character arcs and such. I do think they're very well done and such. I definitely I definitely started caring for them a lot throughout this entire movie and definitely wanted to see where their relationship was heading. I do feel like there's definitely a sense of like realness to this movie. Like it doesn't feel like entirely cliched and predictable and such like you would see in a normal rom-com and such. It definitely feels more natural. It definitely feels like kind of a real relationship at times. And I do think that it does feel very genuine. I do feel like a lot of the cinematography is kind of handheldish, which I feel like kind of adds to the realness a bit. I feel like, if something is still like say this, but it would be for like big production Hollywood romantic comedy and such. But this movie doesn't go for that. It kind of just feels like kind of more grounded and such. So I feel like the little cinematography is a little more amateurish, which I think it kind of helps it. I do feel like the non-linear structure is definitely a benefit. I kind of like it when movies are kind of like out of order a bit, so I can kind of figure out like, okay, where's this part? Like, where's this part going? And then you kind of go back and watch it, and you're like, oh, I didn't really notice that before. It's like, okay, I didn't really notice that before, and it's like, okay, maybe this scene will go here. No, this would have had to happen first and such. So I kind of like it when movies do that. Like, I do feel like if I do watch this movie again, which I don't know if I'm going to watch it again, because this movie is pretty sad, if I'm being honest. But I do think I would definitely go back and try to figure out like when parts of the plot actually happen in this movie. So it's like, okay, now I can kind of see where this is going. And I do feel like even though it is an emotional movie, I do feel like it's very well earned. I've definitely seen a lot of movies lately where it feels like they're trying to make you cry, they're trying to make you tear up a bit. But honestly, it doesn't really do much for me. It's like just saying, just simply cry because this is sad and such. No, you definitely feel a lot for these characters. And I definitely feel like, it was very tragic. And I feel like it's very put together and such, but very well put together and such. But it's definitely worth it. Like it's definitely the gut punch is there, and I feel like it's worth it. But let's talk about the couple things I don't like about this movie. I feel like the main plot itself is a little too simple. Like it's as I mentioned, the plot, as much as I could go into it without spoiling and such, I feel like it's a little too simple. And I feel like they use the whole, non-linear structure as a gimmick rather than like trying to like make it more than just like a regular story and such, which may sound contradictory to everything I was just saying, but I definitely feel that way at times. Like they kind of throw in a lot of things that you've kind of seen in a lot of movies that are, either romantic comedies or romantic dramas and such, or even just, tragedies in some way. And I'm like, you're throwing all this out there. Like, oh, okay, yeah, you're definitely throwing this out there. Like when you hear like, one storyline come in, you kind of know where it's gonna go. But again, I do think it is very effective because of the two lead performances for the most part. And I do think there are some pacing issues here and there. The movie is just under 2 hours long, which, that's normal for a movie like this. I definitely felt like there were a couple pacing issues here and there. Maybe some storylines, maybe some parts of the storyline don't always connect right away. And then by the end, it's like, okay, they kind of do. So I definitely feel like it could have tightened up a little bit. It's maybe been like an hour and a half, hour 40 maybe. And I feel like it would have been a much better movie. But I would still recommend this mainly because of the two leads and because the structure is maybe not that different, but at least it's kind of different for a movie like this. So kind of like still kind of like Blue Valentine in a way, but definitely a lot less tragic. So I don't know about that. Maybe as tragic as Blue Valentine, but not as cynical, I will say. So We Live in Time, the actors do a fantastic job. I do like the nonlinear structure. I definitely like the real approach to it. Like, it definitely feels a lot more grounded than a lot of romantic movies out there. And even though I do find the script a little too simple and a little too cliche, and there are some pacing issues, if you like those two actors, I feel like you're going to enjoy this movie. I'll give We Live in Time 3 out of 4 stars. See it. So, what was the last great romance movie you saw? Or what was the last movie that made you cry? I don't know. Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.